Thank you so much for watching Landumc Goes There. Please subscribe and hit the like button and the bell notification button. The Postman Always Rings Twice is a 1981 erotic thriller that was directed by Bob Rafelson. It stars Jack Nicholson and Jessica Lange, and it's the fourth adaptation of the 1934 novel that bore the same name that was written by James Cain. It's the story about a drifter named Frank Chambers, played by Jack Nicholson, as he stops during the Depression in a California diner in the hills outside of L.A. for a meal, and he ends up going to work there. This diner is operated by a young, beautiful woman named Cora, played by Jessica Lange. She's married to a much older man named Nick Papadakis, played by John Colicos. He's a hard-working but unimaginative immigrant from Greece. Shortly after they meet, Frank and Cora begin to have an affair. Cora grows extremely tired of her situation, being married to an older man that she doesn't love, and she wishes to work at the diner, but she wants to own it herself and to improve it. She and Frank scheme to murder Nick to start a new life together without losing the diner. The first attempt at the murder is a failure, but they succeed in their second attempt. A few months later, Frank has an affair with Madge Gorland, played by Angelica Houston. All this is done while Cora is out of town. When she returns, she tells Frank that she's pregnant. Frank soon finds out, after being away for a bit, that Madge has visited Cora and given her the lowdown on their affair. They eventually patch things up in their relationship and begin making plans for a future together. However, on the way back after being married, Cora dies in a car accident while Frank is driving. Now you might ask, what does all this have to do with the postman always ringing twice? And that's a good question. They struggled to name this film. Actually, they struggled to name the original book. The term "the postman always rings twice" comes from an identifying double ring that letter carriers used in British and Irish traditions, and it doubles as a metaphor for the delayed justice that's handed out to Frank and Cora, the killers. The postman standing in for justice. Jack Nicholson was 43 when he made the movie. Jessica Lange was 31. In the original novel, Frank Chambers' character is 32 and Cora is 21. When the auditions for the movie were taking place, the director wrote down the name of the actress that he thought ought to be cast as Cora. He put it inside a sealed envelope. Several months later, he gave that letter to Jessica Lange, whose name was on the inside. This is the fourth adaptation of this novel. The first was a French one done in 1939. The second one was an Italian one done in 1943. The third being an English version in 1946. This is the first version that was done in color. All of the three earlier versions were done in black and white. Irish film censorship in the early 1980s was notorious for being very strict. They didn't like to see any simulated sex on the screen, and they wanted to do everything possible to defend family values. The movie set a major precedent in Ireland when it passed uncut by the Irish film censor Frank Hall. And I have to admit, some of the scenes in this film are pretty intense. Not so much in the nudity aspect. It's just that the graphic nature of it is pretty in your face. It's one of the first of the 1980s and 1990s in adult erotic thrillers. The picture was soon followed after about 6 months with the movie Body Heat from 1981, then Fatal Attraction from 1987. In 1990, we saw The Grifters, and in 1992, there was Basic Instinct. Meryl Streep turned down the part of Cora, and Elia Kazan was tested for the role of Cora's husband. There was also some talk in the late 70s that studio executives wanted Raquel Welch for this role as Cora, but they backed off of that. According to production notes on the film, the set for Twin Oaks was built on a remote stretch of road in San Marcos, California, near Santa Barbara. A hotel in the Skid Row area of LA doubled as the 1930s bus station, and other locations were filmed in and around San Diego. This is one of two film versions of Kane's novel that is now owned by Warner Brothers Entertainment, which acquired the film through its 1989 purchase of Lorimar. The film was poorly received by the critics when it was first released. They felt the remake of the 1946 movie was a wasted endeavor. One of the reasons they felt this way was that the ending was considered very weak compared to the original film. They also criticized the meaning of the title for not being explained more, which they felt led to confusion among viewers. But Jack Nicholson came back at all this, and he said that if you ran a question through the industry about this movie, most people would surmise that it was not successful. He felt that that was not true. He stated that he knew it made money because he received payments for the overages that it received. But people were pretty anxious to disqualify it immediately. I think that's a real common thing that you would see in any remake. Now, granted, it's not as good as the 1946 version, but it would be tough to compete with that. The star of the 1946 version, Lana Turner, wouldn't even watch the remake. She had seen advertisements for it and blurbs on TV, and she stated it made her sick. She felt like that the studio had turned that movie into trash. Now, it is pretty notable for its on-the-kitchen table sex scene between Jessica Lange and Jack Nicholson. This scene was so realistic that many audiences believed that it was real and not simulated. This notion was completely denied by Nicholson and Lange. When the scene was shot, the set was cleared. Only the director and the cinematographer were present alongside the actors. But when plotting the characterization for the role of Cora, Jessica Lange decided that the young woman had first tried to make it as a movie actress in Hollywood, and that she had struck out and eventually married this older man for stability. When Jack Nicholson learned this, he gave her the autobiography of a trashy blonde B-movie actress named Barbara Payton. This book was published in 1963 with the title, I'm Not Ashamed. Lange based her entire character's history partly on Payton, who, like her, was born in Cloquet, Minnesota. How strange is that? Barbara Payton was an aspiring actress that was born in 1927, and she had the world in front of her. She could have made it big time, and she had dreams of that. But her stormy social life and her battles with alcohol and drug addiction took its toll on her. She had stormy marriages and affairs with people like Howard Hughes, Bob Hope, Woody Strode, George Raft, and many others. Her hard living and hard drinking ultimately destroyed her physically and emotionally. It's been stated that she was one of the biggest high-class hookers in demand in the Hollywood area, and that she had multiple skirmishes with the law, being arrested many times for passing bad checks, and also being arrested for prostitution on Sunset Boulevard. After one of these arrests, she was offered the option to be admitted to a detoxification unit, and she declined. She stated she'd rather drink and die. In 1967, she was ill and seeking refuge from her turbulent life when she moved to San Diego to live with her parents. On May 8th, she died at her parents' home from heart and liver failure at the age of 39. Her parents, who also suffered from alcoholism, died a few years later. I hope you'll take another look at The Postman Always Rings Twice from 1981. I think you'll find it enjoyable. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.